get a little weird, right? You went from a true academic, someone who's changing the world, literally, to a guy who owns a bar. I'm sorry. All right? It's the first Zag talk. We can go up from here. But I have really exciting news to share with you guys, something that I love. Just take a look at this. Oxford University, or as you might know it, the poor man's Gonzaga of Europe, just released this study, and basically, in short, regulars at local pubs lead better and healthier lives and actually drink in moderation more so than their peers. Hooray for that. It's wonderful for business. It's wonderful for all of you. If you learn nothing today, I just encourage you leave here and become a local at your neighborhood bar. It is actually good for your health. So even in my little bars in North Portland, Northeast Portland, we are maybe changing communities, maybe changing the world, one beer, one whiskey at a time. I went to Gonzaga in the fall of '95, although this was not the Gonzaga that I knew. This was the Gonzaga that I knew. Might be a little bit familiar. And this was not me, that was me, about 40 pounds ago, and before all my hair migrated from my head to my chin. Lived here, as many of you guys can relate. CM, Southwest Hall, room 11. CM has never looked that good ever. There's green grass in front, and no one's smoking or playing hacky sack. As an upperclassman, I moved to 1228 North Hamilton Avenue, or as many of you know it. Not figuratively, I didn't just live at Jack and Dan's, I actually lived at Jack and Dan's. That's my apartment up there in the upper right corner. Like any true Zag. I can neither confirm nor deny that the gentleman right there is Father Frank Case. It's a rumor, it didn't start here. Strange resemblance. But you might see a trend here, obviously, in bars and what it meant to my life. Also, I graduated Gonzaga in 1999. For those of you guys, you know it's a seminal moment in Gonzaga basketball history. It really was the birth of Gonzaga basketball as we know it today. Some of my classmates up there on the screen, some of my favorite individuals, helped to lead the team to the Elite Eight. And believe it or not, that was 17 whole years ago. Here's a stunning statistic. Incoming freshmen next year will have literally never been on the earth when Gonzaga was not in the NCAA tournament. How old do you feel? It's horrific. Right, so I graduated Gonzaga, and as Devin said, I then made my way out to Portland, Oregon, and I really didn't have much of a career plan. I was horribly disorganized. I was paranoid. I didn't get into grad school. I was a solid B student. And I just thought that I wanted to work in the sporting industry, and I wanted to work for one of these companies that I knew was headquartered in Portland, and I didn't know how. It's a story for another time, but through amazing strokes of luck, I landed on at Adidas in their apparel division. Basically doing menial labor, and I stuck. And I wouldn't let go until I got to work and be in charge of basketball. And eventually I got to live that dream and be in charge of basketball at Adidas. Pretty cool, right? Until the big guy calls. In the world of basketball, there's really one brand. And Nike offered me the job or recruited me to be in charge of their basketball apparel business. And how could you possibly say no, right? So for the last 11 years, I lived an incredible dream, right? I got to work with the greatest product on the greatest athletes in the sport of basketball, which I love. Obviously, as a Zag, getting to work on Team USA's uniforms is one of the coolest things. I got to outfit 3 Olympics. Got to work on amazing projects that got tons of marketing and television around the world. Got to work with the best athletes. This guy might look a little bit familiar, playing his last year. He's about to retire too. I beat him to it. Feel pretty good about that. One of my favorite guys I ever got to work with, Kevin Durant, got to do some silly things with some of these guys and rub shoulders with some of the world's greatest. And the sport of basketball literally sent me around the world to places that I could never imagine going. It was insane. There was no place that I loved to come back to professionally more than coming back to Gonzaga. Yes, I am the guy that whether you love them or hate them, got to work on all of Gonzaga's uniforms and all the gear that Coach Few and the boys take the court in. Pretty cool thing as an alumni to bring my team of designers and product people to Spokane, give them a little tour, show them around, take them to Hoop Fest, and get to work with the team, with the coaches, and come up with the stuff that they get to wear and help tell our story of Gonzaga out to the world. Pretty amazing. No matter where I went, I loved coming back home. But after a period of time, when you work for a large corporation, no matter the company that you keep, on occasion you're just 2 really bored guys in a conference room. There's me and Kobe looking just bored to tears. And I have nothing ill to say about my time at Nike. It was incredible. It afforded me so many things I can't even begin to tell you. My wife still works there. They still provide me my insurance. My kids go to daycare there. I still get to go to the employee store. I get all the benefits. My wife shared a lot of risk with me when I left. But I realized in my time there that there was something else that was kind of itching at me, and I needed to go out and explore it a little bit further. And it was this other side of life, this other passion that I had that wasn't basketball. And it was Ted Danson. Not really Ted Danson, but as a child of the 80s, I blame it on television. I grew up watching Cheers, and I loved this idea of a neighborhood bar, truly of a place where everybody knows your name. And as bars being a wonderful center of a community, much like Jack and Dan's is a center of the Gonzaga community in a wonderful way. And I always had this dream that I wanted to open a neighborhood bar. And sure enough, after many years and many discussions with a couple of my friends, I found some idiots who were brave enough to do it with me. And me and two other partners opened our first bar in North Portland called the Old Gold, a little neighborhood whiskey pub. If you ever go to University of Portland game when Gonzaga visits, it's a great pregame and postgame stop. I encourage you to swing by. I loved opening the bar and being part of a small business and being a small business owner made me better at my day job, right? It made me a better leader of my team working for that corporation, and I felt like the yin and yang of those two worlds were phenomenal. And I was reinvigorated, and I loved my career, and I went on to bigger and better things within Nike for a few years. We opened the Old Gold back in 2011. The one other story about opening the Old Gold was that we opened it 3 weeks after I got married. For those taking notes, don't ever do that. When you spend your honeymoon at your bar, it's not a good start. My wife, again, the most wonderful woman on the planet and most understanding and patient. So I had these two companies in my life, right? Nike and the Old Gold. And that really reinvigorated me for a few years, but then sure enough, I kind of found myself back in this place again. I was just another bored guy in a conference room working for a corporation. And from the very little bit that you can tell about me, you can imagine I'm not great at taking orders from other people. I just ultimately realized that my passion was very much more on the other side of life in being a small business owner and being an entrepreneur. And all the wonderful things that Nike afforded me put me in that position to be able to take a bigger risk, retire, which is a strange word to use at age 37, and open our second bar. This is a picture of Pay Dirt, which is our newest baby. It is the very shiny new younger sister to the Old Gold. And so there my two corporations became these two little whiskey bars, the Old Gold and Pay Dirt, right? And a lot of times when I went through this process, when people don't actually know kind of some of the timeline of my story, the second they hear, I'm kind of known as the guy that quit a dream job or walked away from a wonderful career at an amazing corporation making basketball clothes. I literally, in my career, I think I figured out I was responsible for creating or selling roughly $6 billion in polyester. It's a really weird legacy, right? But when people hear that story and they hear that I walked away from it, a lot of people say, man, what incredible risk that you took. What a gamble that you did to go and do that just to pursue a dream. And when I think of risk takers and gamblers, I think of these two handsome men right here, right? The original. Is there anybody in the world more masculine, Evel Knievel right there? That chest hair is so amazing. Or the gambler, Kenny Rogers, right? I don't relate to these guys because these guys seem like superheroes to me, and I'm certainly not. I'm just some guy that wanted to open a bar. And in fact, I'm massively risk averse. I consider myself that. I'm not a risk taker at all. Ever since I was a kid, I hate trying new things unless I know I'm going to be good at them. My mom had to talk me into going skiing. My mom had to talk me into going and playing basketball, bribing me with toys. I never liked to do new things. I didn't like to go outside of my comfort zone, right? And I thought about this video I'm about to show you, and I can relate. I can't relate to these guys, but I can relate to this little 10-year-old girl. So inside, I am probably a little 10-year-old kid, maybe a 10-year-old girl. This is a minute and 40 of your life, and it's well worth it. You're going to end up going and rewatching this video more and more. But I just encourage you, listen to it. Listen to as many things as you hear, because there's a ton in here. And take a little ride with this girl as she takes her very first ski jump of 40 meters.
I'll be fine.
Have fun.
I'll do it. Well, here goes something, I guess. Ooh. Okay, you can do this. I'm gonna jump.
You got it.
Whoa, my ski's slipping off.
Just remember, never snowplow, okay?
No snow plows.
Just keep it straight and you'll be fine. Do
Okay.
the same thing you do on the 20.
Straight. Do you go faster on the in run?
Little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Is it any steeper, do you think? Not much?
Same steepness, it's just longer.
Well, just longer. Just longer. Just a bigger 20, that's all.
Yep. Have
It's a
fun.
bigger 20.
Go ahead. You got this.
I got it.
It's fine. You'll be fine.
Okay. Here
The longer you wait, you'll be more scared.
I go. Yeah!
Easy, huh?
Just the suspense at the top at the first time freaks you out. That's the only thing. It's so fun. Huh? 60 seems like nothing now. Whoa!
I watch that all the time, and I get goosebumps every time. I love that little girl, right? She is my spirit animal. She's amazing, and there's just so much in there. These are some of my favorites, but she starts it off with, "Here goes something." How cool is that? At 10 years old, she's that aware. Here goes something. The advice from the teacher or the instructor next to her, remember, never snowplow. And she's kind of going through all that process in her head, just thinking about this risk, this jump she's about to take. And then her friend, he's one of the hardest ones to hear, but her friend weighs in and says, remember, the longer you wait, you'll be more scared. Isn't that, like, it's everything about risk all in that video. I can just leave. That's all you need, right? The guy who shared that video with me, it was Dr. Michael Gervais. He's a world-renowned sports psychologist. For you, those of you guys that are Seattle Seahawks fans, you might know him more as the sideline shrink. He's known as the team psychologist for the Seahawks and works closely with Pete Carroll. The guy's phenomenal, and he spends a lot of time in Seattle. If anybody ever has a chance to go see him speak, I can't recommend it enough. Life-changing. He's insane. That he introduced that video to me, and outside of working with the Seahawks, Dr. Gervais also works with Red Bull athletes, true daredevils, right? Guys that do crazy risks. For those of you who aren't familiar, this guy is Felix Baumgartner. He's an Austrian daredevil, if you will, that in 2012 rode a helium-filled little capsule 24 miles up into the atmosphere and did a free fall jump out of it, eventually parachuting down to Earth. Broke the record for the longest ever jump. It's since been broken, actually. But he's still the only human being on the planet to break the speed of sound unassisted by a vehicle, right? That's pretty crazy. Talk about risk. This guy wouldn't open a bar, I'm sure, but he'll jump out of that, right? But the thing that I learned from Dr. Gervais, he worked very closely with him, with Felix, and works with a lot of their kind of crazy, extreme, daredevil athletes and motorcycle jumpers like Robbie Madison. And the thing that he found amongst all kind of high-performing folks and people that take these seeming risks is that they're bound by this same kind of notion that not taking risk is a bigger risk. That once these guys get something in their head, this goal that they want to do, or they want to try and achieve, to them, it would be heart-wrenching and it would kill them inside to walk away from that goal or from that challenge. So it's not a matter of if they're going to do it. The actual jump part of it is typically a piece of cake for those guys because they've done a ton of homework, right? And they know exactly how much risk is going into there, and they're minimizing it. So these guys that seemingly take these gigantic risks, you ask them, they're not taking risks at all. It's just math, it's physics. They're just figuring it all out, which is pretty cool. That quote of the only risk is not taking any risks, every CEO of every billion-dollar company has said something like that, right? And I always find it almost, I don't know, a little unrelatable or a little insulting. At Nike, we always associated that quote with Phil Knight, the original entrepreneur and founder, and Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook has thrown that quote around quite a bit lately. If you Google it, there's 1,000 cliches and inspirational posters that have that quote on it. That's all fine, but I think it's funny when billionaires talk about risk, that even if they lose $300 million, they're still billionaires, right? For the rest of us, what is it really like? Again, I'm a 10-year-old little kid. I need it simplified, back to rules that I understand. And the first one for me when I think about risk, and again, this is as much to remind myself as to encourage anybody else, because I am risk averse. I don't like doing new things. But the first thing is sharing. And to me, sharing is twofold. And the hardest part of taking a risk for most people is just putting it out into the world, is just saying what you want to do, right? Think about when you've had something in your head, maybe a dream you want to follow, maybe you want to do naked karaoke, maybe you want to run a marathon, maybe you want to lose 10 pounds. The hardest part is just verbalizing it sometimes and putting it out there. Because the second that you do, people are going to hear you, and they're going to start to hold you accountable. How's that marathon coming? What song are you going to karaoke, right? Even worse, you are going to start to hold yourself accountable. Right? No one wants to be that person that walks around and says, someday I'm going to do this. Yeah, I'm going to quit my job. I swear I'm going to. The guy that walks around the office and says he's going to quit his job every single day is the most annoying guy in the office, right? But once you share, not only do people start to hold you accountable, it's shocking how many people can help you, and how many people want to help you, right? They want to encourage you. They want to join you. That sounds fun. I'm in. Let's do this together. That then helps you also share risk. Right? Whether it's just somebody who wants to encourage you or help you along the way or coach you. In my personal story, the conversation around owning a bar started over beers after a softball game, as all intellectual conversations begin. And somebody said, what would you want to do if you didn't do your current job? And I said, I've always wanted to open a bar. The next day, I get a text from one of my friends who was at the bar that night, and he didn't say anything. He was too embarrassed to speak up. And he said, hey, that idea of opening a bar, were you serious? Absolutely. I've always wanted to do it too. I never wanted to say it out loud. I thought people would laugh at me. He was a writer. That guy is my partner in the Old Gold. He quit his job. He took a huge risk, and he manages both of our bars, and he is absolutely phenomenal at it. But for him, the hardest thing to overcome was just saying it, was just putting it out into the world, sharing it. Just sharing it is that very huge first step. The second thing for any good 10-year-old, do your homework. Right? The excuse anymore to try something new of, I don't know enough about it, or I've never done it, I don't have any experience, is idiotic. We carry supercomputers around in our pockets, right, that give us access to more information than we can ever absorb in 100 human lifetimes. You just have to know which questions to ask and be willing to ask them and who to ask, right? For anything that you want to get involved in, there are so many experts that you actually can reach out and find a way to get in touch with so easily. Some people say, I wouldn't know who to ask. I wouldn't know where to start. I think that's really kind of the laziest and most uninspired thing ever. In anything that you find, there are experts. And what do experts love to do? Experts love to talk about their craft, right? They love to share. They're waiting. They're begging for you to ask them so they can go on and talk about it. For me, opening a bar wasn't just kind of done on a whim. It took us over 4 years. The neighborhood where we opened the Old Gold, I lived there for 7 years, and I felt like I had a pretty good handle on the consumers in the neighborhood, right? And this is the not-so-sexy part about taking a risk or doing something romantic, is making it more calculated, right? I had to go and look up Census Bureau data and find out who actually lived in the neighborhood. Lo and behold, it was exactly what I hoped it would be. The 2010 census came back, and within walking distance of my little proposed bar, the average human being was an early 30s, single male, first-time homeowner with above-average extra disposable income. That sounds like a bar patron, right? So there is tons of information, but at some point, you do have to do something with it. For Pay Dirt, for our second bar, we're the only bar in the state of Oregon that operates without serving food. We don't have a kitchen, we don't have chefs, but we sit under a building where we share a liquor license with 4 other micro restaurants, little food carts that went into brick and mortar. We're essentially like a very adult food court where we're the Orange Julius, but the Orange Julius is whiskey, okay? That homework was easy to do. When you don't have to incur the costs that are associated with opening and running a kitchen, that was a pretty easy one to make the leap. Another little component of our homework at the Old Gold was not just having regulars that were there, but having worked for a corporation for many years, I know how much people love to throw down their American Express cards and open up company tabs. So it's always great to be close to a large business. Sharing some more news with you guys, and this is a little tough to read, I'll help you out, but this was just published in Willamette Week this last week. Everything you need to know about the Portland shoe industry. We are kind of the mecca of the athletic shoe industry, and I'll bring it up there when they brought up Adidas, my former employer. German shoe giant Adidas has 1,200 employees in its North Portland Uberplex near Old Gold Whiskey Bar. I love that. For a lot of reasons, but I love especially that I used to work for Adidas, and the way that they geographically located is to describe it next to my bar. We actually are, they are great happy hour patrons. We love having them there, and yes, they keep us afloat. They probably help pay the rent. They probably pay the rent before the first week of the year just by putting down that corporate card. So yeah, a little bit of homework goes into it, and as they say, location, location, location. The last piece of the puzzle is, for me, it's the most fun part, right? When you've shared it, when you've got it out into the world, when you got it out into the ether, and you know you're going to do it, and the idea of walking away is more painful than the idea of actually doing it, and you've done your homework. And I like to say, as part of the homework and the calculating part of it, you're essentially just shortening the distance of that jump that you have to make, right? And that no matter how short that jump is, no matter how small it is, the tiniest little risk, the tiniest little bit that you get outside of your comfort zone, we know that's good for us, right? Exercising muscles that haven't exercised, that's good for us. Brushing your teeth with your left hand, that's good for us. Talking to a stranger is great for us. Becoming a regular at a neighborhood bar, it's phenomenal for us. Science, can't argue with it, right? So the one thing I'll encourage everybody here to do, you got a lot of year left, right? We're very early on in 2016. Take a little mental note, and once a month, commit yourself to taking a jump. It can be a tiny one, an absolutely tiny one, right? But just share something out into the world. Do a little bit of homework, and just take that tiny little jump. But remember, never snowplow. Thank you guys so much.